Okay. Oh, I guess I need the chat pulled up on my screen. Oh, I need to set it so that this is on. There we go. Now it should be correct. Alright. I have yet to do a stream like this, so this is new. Yeah, okay, that works. Let's see. I decided to read a book on stream, 'cause why not? I'm going to be reading Off the Page by Jodi Picoult and Samantha Van Leer. Da, da, da. When Oliver sees me, a huge smile breaks across his face. He walks towards me, wraps his arms around me, and swings me in a circle, like I weigh nothing at all. He sets me down, then gently holds my face in his hands, looking at me as if he found treasure. "Hello, Delilah," he says, and he kisses me. I can feel everyone's eyes on me, their mouths gaping. Not gonna lie, I could get used to this. That is what the book is about on the back cover. So on the front it says, "Meant for each other. Meet Oliver, a prince literally taken from the pages of a fairy tale, transported into the real world. Meet Delilah, the girl who wished Oliver into being. It's a miracle that seems perfect at first, but there are complications. To exist in Delilah's world, Oliver must take the place of a regular boy. Enter Edgar, who agrees to play Oliver's role in the pages of Delilah's favorite book. But just when it seems that the plan will work, everything gets turned upside down. In this multi-layered universe, the line between what's on the page and what's possible is blurred. Is there a way for everyone to live happily ever after?" Alright. Let's open this sucker up. There's a map on the first page. Let's see. We are on part 1. Just because you've picked up this book, doesn't mean that it belongs to you. Quite a lot went on before you even arrived. There was a spark of an idea one day, which ignited into a fire of imagination. Each lick of flame burned a line of text, spreading from chapter to chapter. And where were you? Probably in some other book, not even aware that this was happening someplace in the universe. From this blaze came smoke, and from that smoke came silhouettes, marching across the pages, each with a voice to be heard. As they spoke, their edges grew sharper and more defined. Their features rose to the surface, and soon they were characters in their own right. They picked up the lines that had been laid across the page and carried them on their shoulders, wrapped them around their waists, tugged and twisted, and became the story. And still, you weren't here. Then one day, you reached onto a shelf, and out of all the books in the world, you chose this one. Now don't get me wrong, it's not as if you're not important. For the moment you open this tale, your mind awakened the characters. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it really fall? If a character sits in a book and no one reads it, is he truly alive? As your eyes move across the pages, as you heard the story in your head, the characters moved for you, spoke for you, felt for you. So you see, it's quite difficult to know who owns a story. Is it the writer who crafted it, the characters who carry the plot forward, or you, the reader, who breathes life into them? Or perhaps none of the three can exist without the other. Perhaps without this magical combination, a story would be nothing more than words on a page. And Delilah. I've been waiting my whole life for Oliver, so you'd think another 15 minutes wouldn't matter, but it's 15 minutes that Oliver is alone on a bus, unmonitored for the first time, with the most ruthless, malicious, soul-sucking creatures on Earth. High school students. Going to high school is a little like being told you have to get up each morning and run headlong at 60 miles an hour into the same brick wall. Every day, you're forced to watch Darwin's principle of survival of the fittest play out. Evolutionary advantages, like perfect white teeth and gravity defying boobs, or a football team jacket keep you from falling prey to the demons that grow to 3 times their size when they feed on the fear of a hapless freshman and bully him into a pulp. After years of public school, I've finally gotten pretty good at being invisible. That way, you're less likely to become a target. But Oliver knows none of this. He has always been the center of attention. He's even more undeveloped socially than the boy who enrolled last year after 9 years of being homeschooled in yurt. Which is why I'm actually breaking a sweat, imagining everything Oliver could be doing wrong. At this point, he's probably 10 minutes into a story about the first dragon he ever encountered, and while he might think it's a great icebreaker, the rest of the bus will either peg him as a new druggie in town, who put shrooms in his breakfast omelet, or as one of those kids who runs around speaking Elvish, wearing homemade cloaks with foam swords tucked into their belts. Either way, that kind of first impression is one that sticks for the rest of your life. Believe me, I know. I spent my entire school career as that girl, the one who wrote VD Rocks on all of her second grade Valentines, and who literally walked into a wall once while reading a book. The one who recently reaffirmed her subterranean spot on the social status totem pole by accidentally punching out the most popular girl in school during swim practice. Oliver and I make a fabulous couple. Speaking of which, I still can't believe we are one. It's one thing to have a boyfriend, but to have someone who looks like he just stepped out of a romantic comedy, well, it doesn't happen to people like me. Girls spend their lives dreaming of that perfect guy, but always wind up settling when they realize he doesn't exist. I found mine, but he was trapped inside of a fairy tale. Since that's the only world he's ever lived in, acclimating to this one has been a bit of a challenge. How he came to be real, and mine, is a long story, but it's been the biggest adventure of my life. So far, anyway. Delilah, I hear, and I turn around to see my best friend Jules barreling towards me. We hug like magnets. We haven't seen each other all summer. She was exiled to her aunt's house in the Midwest, and I was totally preoccupied with Oliver's arrival. Her mohawk has grown out into an Egyptian bob, which she dyed midnight blue, and she's wearing her usual thick black eyeliner, combat boots, and a t-shirt with the name of her favorite band, du jour, Khaleesi and the Dragons. So where is he, she asks, looking around. Not here yet, I tell her. What if he called the bus his trusty steed again? Jules laughs. Delilah, you have been practicing with him the whole summer. I think he can handle a 15-minute bus ride without you. Suddenly she grimaces. Oh crap, don't tell me you guys are going to be gorilla glued together like Brangelo? B.R. Angelo? Okay. Jules says, jerking her head towards Brianna and Angelo. The school's power couple who seem to have an uncanny ability to be making out on my locker at the exact moment I need to get inside. I think it's great that you have a hot new boyfriend, but you better not ditch me. Are you kidding, I say? I'm going to need your help. Being around Oliver is like when you're babysitting a toddler and you realize the entire house is a potential danger zone. Perfect timing, murmurs Jules as Oliver's bus pulls up to the front of the school. You know how there are some moments in your life when time just slows down, when you remember every minute, every minute detail, how the wind feels against your face, how the freshly cut grass smells, how snippets of conversation become a dull background buzz, and how in that instant there's only the beat of your heart and the breath that you draw and the person whose eyes lock with yours. Oliver is the last one to step off the bus. His black hair is ruffled by the breeze. He's wearing the white shirt and jeans I picked out for him, and an unzipped hoodie. A leather satchel is strung across his chest, and his green eyes search the crowd. When he sees me, a huge smile breaks across his face. He walks towards me as if there aren't 300 people staring at him, the new kid, as if it doesn't matter in the least that the popular girls are tossing their hair and batting their lashes like they're at a photo shoot, or that the jocks are all sizing him up as competition. He walks as if the only thing he sees is me. Oliver wraps his arms around me and swings me in a circle, like I weigh nothing at all. He sets me down, then gently holds my face in his hands, looking at me as if he has found treasure. "Hello," he says, and he kisses me. I can feel everyone's eyes on me, their mouths gaping. I'm not gonna lie, I could get used to this. I met Oliver inside a book. Last year, I got obsessed with a kid's fairy tale that I found in the stacks of the school library, in particular with the prince who was illustrated throughout the pages. Now, lots of readers crush on fictional characters, but mine turned out to be not so fictional. Oliver wanted out of his book, where every day was the same, and into a life that didn't have such a rigid plot line. We had a bunch of failed attempts, including one involving a magic easel that reproduced him in the real world, but flat as a pancake, and a brief period of time where I got sucked into the book and found myself swimming with mermaids and fending off deranged princesses who fancied herself in love with Oliver. Our last-ditch attempt to get him written out of the story included a covert trip to Cape Cod to find the author of the book, Jessamine Jacobs, who had written the story for her son Edgar after his dad died. As it turned out, Edgar was a dead ringer for Oliver, and just the replacement we needed in the book for Oliver. For the past 3 months, Edgar's been living in the fairy tale, and Oliver's been living on Cape Cod, impersonating him. American accent, teenage moods, 21st century clothing, and all. After weeks of persuasion, Oliver finally convinced Jessamine to move here, to New Hampshire, so he could be with me. Oliver and I walked down the hall, where girls bunched together, jockeying into position to take a Snapchat selfie. Bros try to jam a shipping container worth of sports gear into a locker the size of a carry-on suitcase. Cheerleaders gaze at themselves in their locker mirrors, putting on lip gloss in slow motion, as if they're starring in their own Sephora commercial. Suddenly, 2 nerds zoom down the hallway, clutching stacks of books to their chests, careening off bystanders like human pinballs. Oliver nearly gets mowed down in the process. "Is there a fire?" he asks. "No, we only have 15 minutes till class starts." To a nerd, that means you're already half an hour late. I glance down the hallway. They run everywhere, all the time. I can feel everyone's eyes on my back as Oliver and I pass. As we move through the crowds, I purposely bump into him every so often. I do this just so I can make sure he's really here. You have to understand, I'm just not a lucky person. I never win a raffle. Every penny I come across is tails up. My last fortune cookie said good luck with that. This is literally a dream come true. Suddenly, I realize that Oliver is doing the Queen's wave as we head down the science wing. I grab his hand and put it down. "These are not your subjects," I whisper. But when he threads his fingers through mine, I completely forgot to be frustrated. Before I realize what he's doing, he's pulling me around the corner into a narrow hallway that leads to the photography lab. In a delicate choreography, he spins me so that my back is against the wall and his hands are bracketing me. His hair is falling across his eyes as he leans forward, lifts my chin, and kisses me. "What was that for?" I ask, dizzy. He grins, "Just because I can." I can't help smiling back. 3 months ago, I never imagined that I could even reach out and touch Oliver's hand, much less sneak away during school for a secret kiss. The terrible thing about falling in love is that real life always gets in the way. I sigh, taking his hand. "As much as I'd like to stay here, we'd have to get you to class." "So," Oliver says, "what's my first task?" "Well," I reply, taking the printed schedule out of his hand. "Edgar Jacobs," it reads, startling me. It's hard for me to remember that Oliver is masquerading as someone else. How difficult must it be for him? "Your first class is chemistry." "Alchemy?" Not quite. More like potions." Oliver looks impressed. Oh, look, there's an ad. "Wow, everyone here hopes to be a wizard?" "Only the ones with a death wish, I murmur. I stop in front of a bank of lockers, matching the numbers to the one on his schedule. "This is yours." Go ahead and skip that. He tugs on the lock, frowning at the numerical puzzle of the combination. Then suddenly he brightens, out of nowhere, pulls out a dagger and hacks it against the metal. "Oh my God," I shout, grabbing the knife and stuffing it into my backpack before anyone else can see. "Do you want to get arrested?" "I'm really not that tired," Oliver says. I sigh. "No knives, ever, understand?" His eyes flicker with remorse. "There's just so much here that's different," he says. "I know. I empathize. That's why you've got me." I take off the numeric lock using the code on the back of Oliver's schedule, and replace it with a padlock whose combination is 5 letters. Watch, I say using my thumb to roll the wheels until they spell EDAHE. Everyone deserves a happy ending. I think I can remember that. He grins and backs me against the lockers. You know what else I remember? His eyes are as green as a summer field and as easy to get lost in. I remember the first time I saw you, Oliver says. You were wearing that shirt. When he looks at me like that, I can't even remember my name, much less what I'm wearing today. I was? And I remember the first time I did this, he added. He leans in and kisses me. Suddenly, I hear a voice over my shoulder. A voice says, You guys are kind of draped across my locker. Oh God, I've become Barangelo. Immediately, I shove Oliver away and tuck my hair behind my ears. Sorry, I mutter. Won't happen again. I clear my throat. I'm Delilah, by the way. The kid jerks the metal door open and looks at me. Chris, he says. Oliver extends his hands. I'm all at Edgar, I interrupted. His name is Edgar. Yes, right, Oliver says. That is my name. I feel like I haven't seen you before, I say to Chris. I'm new. I just moved here from Detroit. I just moved here too, Oliver replies. Oh yeah? Where from? The kingdom of Cape Cod, I blurt out. Chris snorts. She doesn't let you talk much, man. Where are you guys headed? Edgar's got chemistry with Mr. Zhang, I say. Cool, me too. I'll see you there. Chris shuts his locker and with a wave walks down the hall. Oliver watches him. How come he's allowed to wave? I roll my eyes. It's 8:15 a.m. and I'm already exhausted. I'll explain later, I say. I have enough time to drop Oliver off at his chemistry room before I have to head to French. As we turn the corner, Jules slips up behind us and links her arm through mine. Guess who broke up, she says. Oliver smiles. This must be the famous Jules. Reports of my awesomeness are usually underrated, Jules answers. She gives Oliver a once-over and then nods and turns to me. Well done. I'm kind of in a rush. I'm trying to get him to Zhang's room before the bell rings, I explain. Trust me, you want to hear this. Allie McAndrews and Ryan Douglas. Oliver looks at me questioning. Prom, queen, and king, I explain quickly. He looks impressed. Royalty. They think they are, Jules agrees. Anyway, they broke up. Apparently being faithful comes as easily to Ryan as Shakespeare. Having been in Ryan's English class last year, I know that's saying a lot. Speak of the devil, says Jules, as if we're watching a soap opera. Allie turns the corner, flanked by her posse, from the opposite direction simultaneously. Ryan swaggers down the hall. We bystanders freeze, holding our breath, waiting for the inevitable train wreck. Oh, look, what a rare sighting, Allie says loudly. A man-slut in the wild. Her girls giggle in response. Ryan looks her up and down. Did you eat all of your feelings, Allie? At that, Allie propels herself at him, claws out just in time a kid steps in between them. James, the president of the LGBT Alliance, who has his own bow-tie business and runs conflict resolution training for student mentors. Walk it off, girlfriend, James says to Ryan, who shoves him into the wall. Back off, fairy, Ryan growls. Before I realize what's happening, Oliver is no longer standing next to me. He's heading straight for Ryan. Oh crap, Jules says. You had to date a hero. But Oliver rushes past Ryan, moving towards James, who's now sprawled on the ground. He extends a hand and helps James up. Are you all right? Yeah, thanks, James replies, brushing himself off. This is good. This is really good. Oliver has created the best reputation possible. Everyone is looking at him as if he is a champion, including Allie McAndrews. Oliver puts a hand on James's shoulder. Fairies here are much bigger than I expected, he says, delighted. For a moment, time stops. Something flickers across James's face. Disappointment, resignation, pain. What happens next is so fast that I can barely see it. James pulls back his arm and socks Oliver so hard that he falls backward, knocked out cold. Oh yeah, this is going to be a great year. I fly to Oliver's side, crouching down. By now the crowd has scattered, afraid of repercussions. I help him sit up. He winces as he leans against the wall. Let me guess, Oliver mutters. Fairy means something different here. But I can't answer because when I look at him, I see it. The trickle of black from his nose, the stains on his white shirt. Oliver, I whisper, you're inking. Next chapter, Oliver. It's been 5 whole minutes and my face still looks like I've been clobbered by a giant. I push aside Delilah, who's holding a wet tissue to my nose. The correct term, she says, is gay. I didn't mean to insult him, I mutter. I just didn't know. Don't be so hard on yourself. This is all new to you. But the guilt aches more than my bruises. I resolve to find James later and offer him a gentleman's apology. If 2 people wish to be together, why is it anyone else's business? I ask. Bloody hell, my best friend was a basset hound, and he was in love with the princess, and no one ever batted an eye. Speaking of eyes, I wonder if mine will be black soon. I lean closer to the mirror. I don't understand this, I say. I literally jumped into the fiery mouth of a dragon and leaped off 50-foot cliffs into the ocean and nearly drowned, yet I recover faster than I have from this measly blow. Plus, it hurts. Suddenly, it all makes sense. Delilah, I say, swallowing. I fear I'm dying. You're not dying. You got sucker punched. I should have healed already. Only inside your book, Delilah says. In the real world, you can't just turn the page and feel better. I gingerly touch the bridge of my nose and wince. Pity, I say. I must admit, this is not quite the start I was expecting. I've been rather excited about the idea of going to school in spite of all that Delilah has told me about it. She makes it sound like being chained in a dungeon, but to me it's anything but that. I've been chained in a dungeon before. Over and over and over again, in fact. Even getting walloped by a stranger is new and exciting and unexpected and different from the same 60 pages I've repeated my whole life. You have to get to class, Delilah says. You're already late. Just say you got lost. No one will question a new student on the first day. You remember what we talked about? I begin ticking off the points on my fingers. Don't bow when I meet someone. Don't refer to myself as royalty. Take notes in class as if I'm interested, and even when I am not. The teacher's the king of the classroom, and I'm not allowed to get up and leave unless I am granted permission. Oh, and no knives ever in school. Delilah smiles. Good, and one more. She points to my face. Don't say or do anything that might make that happen again. She pokes her head out the door. We have ensconced ourselves in a privy that is only meant for the teachers to use. When Delilah sees that the hall is empty, she pulls me out beside her and pushes me in the direction of my potions class. Remember, she says, just follow your schedule and I'll meet you at lunch. I nod in turn, but I am called back by the sound of her voice. Oliver, she says, you can do this. I watch her walk away. When Delilah talks like that, it's easy to remember why I gave up everything. I knew in order to be with her, she believes in me. And if someone believes in you wholeheartedly, you start to believe in yourself as well. I take a deep breath and forge ahead into the great unknown. I've been performing all my life. This is just another role. I have a sudden flash of Frump and my best friend in the fairy tale, his tail wagging as he yelled at all of us to take our places. As a new reader cracked open the spine of the book, I wonder if Frump is rounding up the cast even now. I wonder if they miss me. But I have my own work to do here. Whatever butterflies are swarming in my stomach are not the result of fear, just excitement. I push open the door of the classroom and offer my most charming smile to the tutor standing in front of the seated pupils. Sorry I'm late. My deepest apologies, Your Majesty. The students snicker. Mr. Zhang will do, the teacher says flatly. Take a seat, Mr. Jacobs. Edgar Jacobs, formerly of Wellfleet. Fantastic, Mr. Zhang intones. There is only one open seat, and to my delight, it's next to someone I know. Chris, whose locker is adjacent to mine. He looks up and cringes. What happened to you? A miscommunication, I say. Okay, Mr. Zhang announces. I'm going to hand out a little pop quiz to see how much you guys already know. Don't panic. It's not going to count towards your final grade. He moves through the aisles, giving each of us a sheet of paper. Chris hunkers down over the quiz, his pencil scratching vigorously. I glance at the page and frown. I beg your pardon, I say, getting Mr. Zhang's attention. I think mine is written in the wrong tongue. English isn't your first language? Indeed it is, the Queen's English to be precise, but this writing is full of strange dashes and arrows and chains of C's and O's that look like insects. The teacher sighs. Then just tell me the 3 things you know about chemistry. I take a pencil from the leather satchel that I've carried to school. 1. Eye of Newt and Dragon's Breath combined in equal volume can cure the common cold. 2. The juice of forget-me-nots distilled will restore a lost memory. 3. One should never lick the spoon. By the time we pass in the quiz, I am quite pleased with myself and awfully grateful for this time I spent in the Wizard Orville's cabin watching him craft his concoctions. I managed to sit through class, nodding along and taking notes as Delilah instructed, although I really have no idea what the point of a table is if it's periodic rather than constant. As the teacher speaks, I let my attention drift, marveling as I look around the classroom. With the exception of Chris, I don't recognize anyone. It's as if this world keeps reproducing new people, as if they're coming out of the woodwork. Having grown up with the same cast of 30, I marvel at features and clothing and faces that I've never seen before. One girl sitting in the front of the room has a ring through the side of her nose, like the oxen in the fields behind our castle. A boy carries a wheeled board strapped to his satchel, as if he must be ready to zip away at any instant. I glance at the girl to my left. In place of notes, her tablet is filled with swirling images that stretch from corner to corner. She must be an artist of sorts. The bell rings, startling me. It seems to serve as a cue. Everyone stands up and starts packing away their books. Chris glances at me as he zips up his satchel. So what made your family move here? I don't really have an answer to that. After I realized that Edgar was in the book and I was really truly out of it, my first step towards becoming real was to masquerade as the boy whose life I stole. That means getting Jessamine Jacobs, the author of the fairy tale and Edgar's mother, to believe that I was her son. And I do not think that there is anything more challenging than trying to fool the one person who knows their child best, namely, the mother, who's been there from the very first moment of his life. There were many near disasters when Jessamine seemed to be on the verge of discovering that I was not Edgar. She would stare at me for long moments, a curious expression on her face. I caught her once going through the drawers of the furniture in Edgar's chamber. Each night at dinner, she asked me if I was feeling all right, because I didn't seem quite like myself. That was troubling enough, but even more devastating was the fact that this foreign world was so much bigger than the 60 pages to which I was accustomed. The girl I traded everything for lived 4 hours away. I had to get Jessamine to believe that it was necessary for us to move to Delilah's hometown, and I had to do it in a way that Edgar might have. After weeks of shooting down my creative excuses, less air pollution, struck by Cupid's arrow, better school district, Jessamine finally announced one afternoon that moving to New Hampshire would indeed be a good idea. I still don't know what changed her mind. I'm just incredibly relieved that it changed. My mom's, a freelance editor. She was ready for a fresh start, and she can work anywhere. I look at Chris. How about you? My dad got a job here, and my mom liked the idea of raising her kids in fresh air, Chris says. Detroit's kind of the anti-New Hampshire in a lot of ways. I've never seen so many white people in my life, he grins at me. So how long have you and Delilah been together? Technically, 3 months, I replied. Oh, serious, huh? Well, I'm trying not to be. She wasn't too thrilled when I proposed. She wants to do something called dating. Chris looks at me. Where are you from again? Wellfleet, I say. Have you found true love? It's only second period, Chris laughs. You're the closest relationship I have in this school so far. I follow him into the hallway, and we both turn towards the staircase. I've got Trig with Baird, Chris says. Apparently, she only wears black and keeps rocks in her desk drawer. I hear she's a total witch. Really? I say. Then how come she isn't the one teaching potions? Chris smiles. Dude, you're weird, but you're entertaining. See you later. He heads downstairs, and I turn to the staircase, nearly colliding with just the person I hope to find. James. I say, his eyes slide away from mine, and he starts up the steps. Wait. Honestly, I think you've said enough for today. But I said the wrong things. I wait for him to stop moving and face me. I never meant to offend you. Where I come from, that word means something different. And where is that? Neverland? Something like that. The sea of students parts around us, as if we are stones in a river. I think about how I would have done anything to be with Delilah, and how there was no point being in any world unless she was with me. The very reason I moved here is because I believe that everyone should have the right to be with the person they love. James stares at me for a long moment, as if he's trying to gauge my sincerity. Finally, he nods. You should think about joining the LGBT alliance, he says. We could use more allies like you. He fiddles with a pin on the strap of his pack, and affixes it to my chest like a knight's medal. I glance down and I see the rainbow fastened to my shirt. James glances over his shoulder as he walks off. Sorry I messed up your face, he grins. It was pretty. Inside room 322, a woman with frizzly gray hair stands facing the whiteboard, scrawling, Miss Pingree, in perfect cursive. She turns around as the bell rings again and surveys the class, her eyes lighting on each of our faces. What's in a name, she asks. That which we call a rose by any other name would smell as sweet. So Romeo would, were he not Romeo called, retain that dear perfection which he owes, without that title. The other pupils in the class are fidgeting and yawning, ignoring the impromptu performance, but I recognize a great actress when I see one, and I even know the script from which she is quoting. It was one of the books on Rapsculio's shelves that Queen Maureen read over and over, the most classic of classic love stories. Miss Pingree finishes her recitation, and I jump to my feet, scrolling up the central aisle until I stand only a few feet away from her. I fall to one knee, professing my undying love. I take thee at thy word, I say, letting loose the reins on my British accent. Call me but love, and I'll be new baptized. Henceforth, I never will be Romeo. Her jaw drops. Two bright spots of color appear on her cheeks. For a moment she's speechless, no doubt swooning at my excellent thespian chops. Well, well, she says, recovering. I see the gods have granted my wishes and finally given me a student worth teaching. Are you a fan of Shakespeare? Am I a fan of Shakespeare? I repeat. Is Hamlet indecisive? Is Lady Macbeth mad? Is Falstaff portly? I realize, mid-sentence, that I am still speaking in my British accent, and I clear my throat. I'm Edgar, I say, mimicking the flat American sounds of everyone else's speeches. The new kid in town. And one I hope to see in the drama club this year. Thank you, Edgar, for joining me in a rousing performance from our first reading assigned this semester, Romeo and Juliet. Mark, Helen, Allie, come help me pass out books. I take my seat again, feeling awfully chuffed. Wait until Delilah hears about this, and she thought that I wouldn't fit in. I have a sense that English is going to be my strong suit. Perhaps I will even advance a grade level, or be asked to proctor a course. Suddenly, a book is slipped onto my desk, pushed closer by a slender hand with red polish. I look up to find the very girl who precipitated the fight that led to my morning beating. Delilah's nemesis, Allie McAndrews, stands before me. Her sleek blonde hair is shoulder length, and she has so much makeup on her eyes that when she flutters her lashes, all I can think of are spiders. Her lips turn up in a half smile, as if she knows a secret and I don't. Maybe for once, she says, English will be interesting. At midday, when I enter the cafeteria, I see that Delilah is pacing. You made it, she says, grabbing my arm as if she needs to convince herself that I'm still really here. I understand. I feel the same way about her. I thought maybe you'd end up in the principal's office. She scrutinizes my face. You don't have a black eye. In truth, I've forgotten about the fight. So much has happened. Delilah, this place is spectacular, I say, beaming. She looks up at me, quizzical. Maybe you got hit harder than I thought. No, truly, there must be hundreds of students in this school, and each one is a mystery. And in chemistry, I get to choose who my scene partner is instead of being told whom I have to work. Lab partner? Yes, right. That's what it's called. And the best part is, nothing about my day has anything to do with saving a princess. Congratulations, Delilah says, but trust me, the novelty wears off. She pulls me into a line and hands me a lime green tray. Behind a plastic shield, what appears to be a troll in a hairnet is glumping slop onto a plate. What is that? I asked Delilah. Lunch. But it's alive. It's not quite a royal banquet, but it meets the federal nutrition standards, apparently. Reluctantly, I take the plate as it is offered to me. I'll go get us water, Delilah says. I wander towards students clustered in small groups at tables. This, according to my schedule, is lunch period. The freedom is almost unbearable. Imagine a half hour every day when you are able to do whatever you want without worrying that someone is going to open the book and force you back into place on page 1. I take stock of the scene, marveling at how lucky I am to live this charmed life. Then I notice someone waving. It's Allie from my English class, seated with her ladies-in-waiting, who all look unnervingly similar. Edgar, she says as I walk over with my tray. You can sit with us. I glance over my shoulder to see Delilah standing on the periphery looking for me. I'm so sorry. I already have plans for lunch period. Allie's gaze follows mine to light on Delilah. Her hand touches my arm. Just so you know, she says coolly, I'm kind of a big deal at this school, so when you're done geeking out with the village loser, text me. She pulls out a sparkly pink pen and writes a series of numbers on my forearm, punctuating it with a fat heart. I walk back to Delilah and tap her on her shoulder. Looking for me? She grins. Always. Delilah leads me to a table where Jules sits, trying to sculpt her mound of food with her utensils. Nice artwork, I say. Does it look like those Easter Island heads to you? 'Cause that's what I'm going for, Jules says. I try to pull Delilah's chair out for her because that's what princes do. But the chair is oddly attached to the table and doesn't budge. It was a nice gesture, Oliver, she murmurs, putting her hand on my arm, and then her fingers slide down to my wrist, pulling my hand up so she can read what's written on my skin. What's this? Allie requests a text from me, I say. I'm thinking she might enjoy Beowulf. Jules spits her chocolate milk across the table as Delilah's eyes fly to mine. Why do you even know her? She's in my English class, which, by the way, I stoned. You mean rocked? Jules corrected me. Were you flirting with her, Delilah says? It was nothing more than a conversation, I explained. Why would I be interested in Allie McAndrews? I wait for her to meet my gaze. I've got you. Jules puts down her fork. I'm barfing rainbows. Do you know Snow White, Delilah asks. Not personally. Well, that apple might look pretty good on the outside, but just remember, she's poison at the core. Mind if I sit down, a voice says, and I turn to find Chris standing behind us. Please do. You already know Delilah, and this is Jules. Jules, Chris. He just moved here from Detroit. Welcome to hell, Jules says. I hope you've got your complimentary brimstone cocktail when you checked in. And my free $100 in chips, Chris replies smoothly. Or is the casino on the 4th floor just a prank they play on the new kids? There's no casino, Jules laughs, but don't miss the Olympic-sized pool up there. I nudge Delilah's shoulder. There's no 4th floor, I whisper. It's a joke, she answers. I reach for her hand, and as I do, I notice the numbers crawling up my forearm, twisting it so that they can't be seen. I thread my fingers through Delilah's. I've held her hand enough times now that it shouldn't feel like electricity running up and down my skin, but just touching her, there are still sparks. So, I say quietly, you and I, are we okay? She looks away. Sure, she says, but her smile doesn't quite light up her eyes. I smile back, or try to. Anyway, because if there's anything I know, it's when someone's acting. When I get home from my first day of high school, the woman who is not my mother, yet who created me, is waiting. How did it go? Jessamine asks. Scale of 1 to 10. 500, I reply. It was spectacular. She seems surprised. Is it that much better than school on Cape Cod? Infinitely. She folds her arms. You've never been such a big fan of school before. I never had a girlfriend there before. As the word escapes, I hope they're true. Jessamine purses her lips. Delilah didn't make the strongest of first impressions on her. In fact, she came off as a little insane, a crazed sycophant who'd run away from home and traveled 4 hours to beg a reclusive ex-author to change the ending of her book. When Mrs. McPhee arrived to pick Delilah up, she was not amused. It took weeks of apologies before her mother even let her out of the house. Luckily, in the brief hours between our realization that I was really truly wholly free from the book and her mother's arrival to drag her home, Delilah created a magical portal for us so that we could communicate even from afar. She calls it Skype. Those first few weeks were terrifying. Not only was I missing Delilah, but I had to impersonate a boy I had only just met, and to do such a cracking job that his own mother would be fooled. It was exhausting being someone other than myself. I wasn't expecting to be released from a book in which I spent every moment pretending to be a person. I'm not only to wind up doing it all over again. In my favor, Edgar had been somewhat less than chatty. He spent a great deal of time in his room with his video games, which gave me time for Delilah's daily lessons on how to act like a teenager. For example, in this world, an adolescent is supposed to do the opposite of what his parents ask him to. Grunting is an appropriate form of communication before noon, and eye rolling is acceptable at all times. Also, thinking before acting is a sure way to be sussed out as an imposter. It was the little things, though, that were the hardest. A lifetime of moments Edgar had with Jessamine Jacobs that I did not. Until she mentioned it, I did not remember the vacation she and Edgar took to Belize, where they both got so sunburned that they had to sleep sitting up. I didn't know that Edgar used to roam the beach with her, looking for coral shaped like the first letters of their names. I didn't know Edgar's favorite color or food or book. I had to recreate a life I'd never lived. And how was Delilah? Jessamine asks. She was the perfect welcoming committee, I say diplomatically. Jessamine laughs. Oh, to be young and in love. I grimace and turn away. Even when I was a prince, I didn't want to hear about my faux parents' love affair. I didn't just create you out of thin air, you know. Go figure, I murmur. She follows me into the kitchen. One thing I've noticed is that in this world, I seem to want to be either sleeping or eating all the time. I take a box of cereal out of the cabinet and stick my hand inside, pulling out a fistful of small yellow puffs. I stare at the insane cartoon on the box. Cap'n Crunch, honestly, as if it was whoever drew this had never met a real pirate. So, Jessamine says, sitting on the stool at the counter, what are your classes like? Who's your favorite teacher so far? Every time I have a conversation, I get flustered. I feel as if I'm being interrogated, as if there are right and wrong answers, and I'm bound to fail. I take a deep breath and paste a smile on my face. I was gobsmacked by my English teacher, I tell her, putting a carton of milk from the refrigerator and nearly drinking from the spout before remembering that seems to be one of Jessamine's pet peeves. She was brilliant. Gobsmacked, she repeats. Brilliant. You know, you've been picking up a lot of slang lately that seems a little out of character for you. You have no idea, I think. I've been reading Dickens. How interesting, since I couldn't even get you to read Shel Silverstein. Delilah gave it to me, I say quickly. Of course, Delilah, Jessamine nods. I suppose she's responsible for your new look as well? I glance down at my jeans and sweatshirt, which, yes, Delilah chose for me so that I would better fit in on my first day. People reinvent themselves all the time, I say. Look at that picture of you and Dad on the mantle. Your hair was a different color and the size of a hot air balloon, and you were wearing leather pants. Clearly you've improved. Jessamine laughs. What happened in the 90s, stay in the 90s, she says, and then she grows more sober. It might be fun to change it up, Edgar, but don't forget who you are. I think of what Delilah told me, how to respond to your parents when they start giving you life lessons. Relax, Mom, I say, unzipping my sweatshirt and tossing it over a chair. I just got better fitting jeans. It's not the end of the world. An odd expression ghosts across her face. Of course not, Jessamine says. Then her eyes widen. Edgar, what did you get all over your shirt? I look down. Until now, I've actually put this morning's debacle out of my mind. My pen exploded. She sighs. Do you know how hard it is to get ink stains out? Somewhat, I say under my breath, replacing the milk. Change the page. Placing the milk in the refrigerator, I begin to rummage through the contents, looking for something else to satisfy my perpetual hunger. I take a small container and pop off its lid, reaching in with my fingers to grab what's inside. No, Jessamine cries. I look up, alarmed, the fruit halfway to my mouth open. Don't you know what that is? Pineapple, I reply, wondering if this is yet another trick question. Which gives you hives, Jessamine points out. Right, I say, dropping the spear back into the container. Forgot. You forgot the week you spent in the hospital when your throat closed up and you couldn't breathe? I hesitate. It's been a long day, I say, and I grab my satchel and sweatshirt, hoping to flee before I do anything else wrong. I'm in my room, absorbed in my studies, trying to understand why all of these chemicals have two-lettered nicknames that make absolutely no sense when I hear a chime on the computer. Delilah's face fills the screen. I wonder if this is the way she saw me when I was inside the book. Close enough to touch, but two-dimensional. What are you up to? Chemistry, I say. Tell me, in what part of the word iron do you find the Fe? Ferrous, it means iron. Then why isn't it called that? Because chemistry's a whole special circle of hell, Delilah says. Why don't you come over here and we can figure it out together? Something tells me we wouldn't get very much accomplished, I grin, which actually sounds rather perfect. After Delilah's overreaction to Allie McAndrews writing her phone number on my arm, I'm relieved to know that she still wishes to see me. But all the same, I scrub those numbers off my skin before I leave home. I don't want to remind her of why she grew angry. I tell Jessamine that Delilah's mother has invited me for dinner and take Edgar's bike from the garage. Delilah's home is a short ride away, but it's all uphill. As I huff my way to her house, I think longingly of Socks, my stallion, who used to be the one doing all of the work when we traveled. When I ring the McPhee doorbell, a dog starts barking. Humphrey is a rescue, a gift from Mrs. McPhee's boyfriend, Dr. Ducharme. He looks enough like From to make me homesick every time I see him, and I can't help talking to him the way I would address my best friend, as if he might actually answer me back. "Good day, Humphrey," I say as Delilah's mother answers the door and pulls him away by the collar. I offer my most winning smile. Mrs. McPhee has softened towards me in the months since Delilah fled to Wellfleet, but I get the feeling she doesn't truly trust me. "Hello," I say. "So good to see you again. You're looking radiant." She raises one eyebrow, dubious, but I am being honest. Delilah's mother cleans other people's houses, and she reminds me a bit of another story from Rapsculio's shelves about a young scullery maid who possesses both glass footwear and inner beauty, which makes a prince fall head over heels for her. "Aren't you the charmer?" Mrs. McPhee replies, opening the door so I can step inside. "How was your first day of school, Edgar?" "It's everything I hoped it would be," I say. "I can't wait for tomorrow." Maybe some of that joy will rub off on Delilah. I think the last time she enthused about school was when her second grade class had Willy Wonka Day and they ate candy for 8 hours straight. Delilah's feet pound down the stairs, and she gives Humphrey an absent pat on the head. "Okay, thanks, Mom. If you're done totally humiliating me, Edgar and I have to go study." Oh, is that what they're calling it these days? Delilah rolls her eyes and pulls me up to her room. She leaves the door open a crack. That's her mother's rule, and that's the only way I'm even allowed upstairs. When I ask her why I couldn't be trusted, she said it's because chivalry really is dead. I know every inch of her bedroom because I had to draw it in excruciating detail during one of our failed attempts to get me out of the book. In the fairy tale, Rapsculio had a magic easel on which he painted an exact replica of his lair. When he sketched a butterfly onto the background scene, it would pop off the canvas, suddenly alive. I tricked him into painting Delilah's chamber, in the hopes that I could then draw myself onto the easel and then reappear alive in her world instead of mine. But sadly, even though I materialized in her three-dimensional bedroom, I remained in 2 dimensions, and we had to start back at square one. Because my life literally depended on me knowing it so well, Delilah's bedroom is more familiar to me than anywhere else. Every other object is pink, and she has so many stuffed animals piled on her bed, I have no idea where she sleeps. The tops of her bureaus are cluttered with mismatched earrings and hair ties, and spare change. Portraits of Delilah, some alone, some with Jules or her mother, are arranged in a mural on the wall behind her headboard. I flop onto her bed, crushing a stuffed panda beneath me. Delilah stretches out beside me, propping her head up on one hand. There are 6 inches of space between us, and it's excruciating. I slip my arm into the curve of her waist and pull her closer, tracing a trail of kisses from her collarbone to her jaw. I bury my face in her hair. She smells of vanilla and cinnamon. "Aren't we supposed to be working on your chemistry?" Delilah whispers. "We are," I say, rolling her on top of me. She flattens her hands on my chest and settles her mouth over mine. Her heart beats against mine, keeping time. Once, Orville told me that when stars collide, universes are born, galaxies expand. That's how it feels when I kiss Delilah, like the whole world just doubled in size. Inside the book, I can run and leap and fall without resistance. And it is still taking a bit of getting used to simply exist here with gravity. But in this moment, I'm thankful for it. I can feel her pressing against me from collarbone to toes, a weight that sinks into my bones and grounds me into this brand new world. It's not just a physical gravity I'm still getting used to. It's the serious reality of having my dreams come true, of being free to do what I wish, of feeling as if I have everything, everyone that I need. It's odd. Love in the fairy tale always felt so fast, skipping over the details to get to the happy ending. With Delilah, I'm moving just as quickly, but I don't miss a single moment. I notice how she chews her pencil when she's nervous, how when I touch her hand she jumps a little as if there had been an electric shock, how when she says my name it's softer than any other word in the sentence. Suddenly, Delilah pushes herself away from me and leaps off the bed, her jaw dropping. I sit up quickly, expecting to see Mrs. McPhee in the doorway, but there's nobody there. "What's wrong?" Delilah points behind me, and I turn around. Hanging in mid-air are 2 words I hoped I'd never see. "Come home." All right. I think I can stop there for today. That's a big, hefty chunk of the book. I'm already on page 37. And how big is this chapter? Yeah, it's pretty big. All right. I will come back tomorrow for another chapter. Go ahead and put this in here. And I will end the stream and start up a new stream with a game. All right. And see you guys later.